Today we're going to be talking about the film Gunda, which is my all-time favorite documentary and one of my very, very favorite films. This is filmed by Victor Kossakovsky, a Russian filmmaker from Leningrad, which is now Petersburg. And this is quite different from every film we've talked about this semester. Kossakovsky does not label his films as documentaries. He considers himself a cinema artist, and he says Gunda is simply cinema. So, in the West, we have this duality of film and documentary film, where film, like default film, is narrative feature film, and then we have a sort of side category which is documentary film. The thing is, all film is always documentary. The only thing is how you use it.
It's the application.
So, anytime you operate a film camera, what is happening?
You can just turn it off.
Anytime a film camera is running, it is imprinting the flow of time through reality. It is imprinting real events. So even if you're making an American blockbuster, if you're on a set and you have actors standing on a set in costumes reading dialogue that a writer wrote for them, and there's a director behind the camera, there's lights on them, in that situation, you are making a documentary of these actors pretending to be something that they are not. So Kossakovsky is working with a method that I call absolutное кино, which is absolute cinema. That has nothing to do with the meme. I was using this term in my own artistic practice before I was aware of the Scorsese meme. And in the meme, absolute cinema means this is a very good movie. That is not at all what I mean. Absolute in this context has three meanings. First of all, it means that the film image is absolutely real. It has the visual appearance of absolute reality, which is true no matter what, no matter how a film is approached. Two, the audience has permission to accept fully the artifice of the filmmaking process. So the audience can say, as they're watching the film, I am watching real events that a real camera recorded in a real moment in time. So the essence of the film is coming out of the interaction between a real camera and a real subject. And then third, which is about the method, the absolute method, which means doing only one thing. In Hollywood, there's this idea that film is a composite art form, where we have all these various disciplines. We have all these different departments. We have writers, we have directors, we have lighting, we have costumes, we have sound, and everyone does their own work, has their own task, and if everyone is skilled in their own area and works together effectively, the film is good. I think this is not an artistic way of thinking. I think that every art form does something that no other art form can do, and to me, the absolute relationship with an art form means doing only that essential element and nothing else. So in cinema, that element is time, capturing the flow of time. Like Tarkovsky said, Andrei Tarkovsky, кино — это мозаика из времени. Cinema is a mosaic made of time. So, how do I advance? Oh, okay. This is a quote from Kossakovsky that sort of launched this process of investigation. He said, if people don't understand reality, if they live in this fantasy believing that humans are the most important creatures in the world and therefore dominate the planet, then I have to show them that there are other creatures around us who have emotions, feelings, thoughts, and who have the right to be here. So this is Kossakovsky, born in Leningrad, which is now Petersburg, 1961, and he started doing stills work at age 7. His uncle gave him his film camera, and he started out with cats and dogs and flowers and grass, so around Petersburg, shooting whatever nature he could find, so like domestic animals and whatever nature was like parks. And then as a teenager, he started biking out of the city into the forest to photograph more wildlife. At age 12, he started working at a motorbike factory to save up for a 500 millimeter lens. If anyone works with lenses, that tells you something very specific about the kind of artist that he is, the direction that his art was moving, what he's interested in. If you're saving up for a 500 mil lens, that means you're interested in capturing very, very intimate portraits of nature at a respectful distance. So you're not disturbing the wildlife, but you're capturing these very, very intimate portraits. And then in the Soviet Union at that time, at age 15, people would have to decide if they're going to go into a field of study or if they're going to continue high school. And so he was torn between becoming a ranger, like he said, protecting forest animals, or going into cinema. And of course he decided on cinema, but he really is doing both in his cinematic work, as you will see. So in 1978 he started working at the Leningrad Documentary Film Studio, which is, I think it's called Lendak, as a camera assistant, and he worked with all the most prominent cinematographers at that studio. One cinematographer, Vladimir Diakonov, told him that he should go into documentaries because he said, you're always searching, you like natural light, and you don't like to manipulate anything. So Kossakovsky is interested in what in Russia they would say, жизнь как она есть, life the way it is. And there was a Latvian filmmaker, Hertz Frank, who came to the studio to show a film called 10 Minutes Older, which is a conceptual film. It's 10 minutes long, and it's a close-up on a young boy's face as he's watching a stage play. And it's just reaction, so it's a documentary. And Kossakovsky was really, really struck by this because the maximum time of a roll of film in the Soviet Union at that time was 10 minutes. So this film there's the feed reel of film, 10 minutes of film, goes through the camera, imprints an image of the world through the lens on the emulsion, and then the whole reel is stored in the take-up reel. So right from feed reel to take-up reel, it's just a single block of time. So there's no editing, it's just capturing a block of reality. So he said it was so revolutionary, I thought this is the way to do it. And he says he forgot about feature films immediately. So Kossakovsky agrees with Tarkovsky and with me that cinema really does not like to be approached as a storytelling medium the way that Hollywood approaches it. This kind of storytelling that we see in American film is really like, that kind of storytelling is coming from literature and from theater. But film is different. I have this idea of time scale, which I've talked with you about, which is that events, if you think about an event in a film, this can happen at different time scales. So you can have an event that is as large as the collapse of a civilization or as small as the twitch of someone's eyelid. And ideally in film, the time scale gets so small that it becomes almost invisible, and it's just a completely smooth, solid block of constantly changing, constantly flowing movement. For Kossakovsky, the most important thing in cinema is image, obraz. So for Tarkovsky it was time, and for Kossakovsky it's image. But those are really the same thing. Time and image in cinema are really the same thing. And so he's interested in showing the audience something that they have never seen before. He talks also about how, he says, if you really want to tell a story, you should write a book. But if you're making a film, you should be showing something. So, started the process. He talks about finding the right actors. So this is Gunda. Gunda's the mother pig at a farm in Norway. And he went to this farm and met Gunda immediately. Like, as soon as he got there, he met her and knew that this was right. And he told his producer that this is like the Meryl Streep of this film. And this brings up a really important conversation about the nature of what people can call acting, but I think is better to call behavior, life behavior in film. In the West, in America, in film there is acting, the craft of acting. Someone pretending to be a character that a writer has written. And that is a theatrical practice. That is technique that has been passed down from the theater and is not native to cinema. But so the thing about cinema is that the camera sees the truth. The camera can tell when you are lying. And proof of this is this film was shot at 96 frames per second. So 4 times the speed of 24. And this is not slow motion. This is real time, but 96 frames per second. So we've seen in Hollywood what happens when filmmakers experiment with high frame rates. Like when Peter Jackson filmed the Hobbit trilogy, and everyone's at 48 frames, and everyone said that it looks like actors in costumes on a set, because it was. And when James Cameron did those hideous Avatar movies, and part of them, sections were in 48 frames, and people said it looks like a video game, because it was. So The thing about frame rate is we're so locked into 24, which was originally arrived at. It was a compromise, really based on money more than anything. But American filmmakers use 24 FPS as a crutch. They hide behind the blur and the stutter because it masks the artificiality of their work. If the image in front of a camera is absolutely real, then adding clarity and smoothing the movement will only enhance the reality. So in Hollywood, if you take a Hollywood movie and film it at high frame rate, it becomes apparent that you're watching actors acting. If you're watching a film like this, it becomes more and more real. And he talks about how he was filming a documentary about ballerinas, and he did tests at various frame rates, and at 24, you just couldn't see any expression on her face. But at high frame rates, not in slow motion, just at high frame rates, you could see all the emotion on her face. So he says 96 is where he is, and he's not interested in moving backward. So he talked to animal behavioral scientists, and he was very disappointed that they studied these animals to figure out basically how to exploit them for profit. So he did his own research, and he figured out a way of working with animals that was ethical. So he went to the pigsty, which is not a great way of saying it, but that is what it's called. That we can say their house. And he made an exact replica of this house, except there was 360 degrees around. There was a slot that was just big enough for the camera lens to fit through. And there was a dolly track all the way around the sty. So the lens would be there's a very long lens through the wall, and the camera body and the crew and director would be sitting outside. So the pigs were alone. So it's a very natural environment where they're comfortable. And there was very minimal lighting. They actually figured out they could use a disco ball, a static, motionless disco ball, to brighten the shadows because there were holes in the roof of the sty. And sunlight was coming through those holes, and so the spots of light from the disco ball had the same look as the sunlight coming through the holes in the roof. And they had 8 microphones inside at various places. So this is not a film that could be done in post. This is not something that could be done with Foley, because what they realized is animals really do have their own language. So they're cows in this film. They recorded at least 300 distinct moos. So it's not just there's a moo sound and cows just like whatever comes out when they're mooing. They are communicating different things based on the situation. And the same thing is true for pigs. So they realized they could not just, like he said, they had to remove Kossakovsky's voice from the background because they couldn't just fill in a stock pig oink sound effect. Because Gunda, the mother pig, is saying things to her children. So basically, what this means is if an animal watched this film, it would be correct. The language is correct. He's a very intuitive filmmaker, Kossakovsky, and he operates his own camera. In this film, he did have a secondary cinematographer who did the Steadicam work, but he likes to be behind his own camera. And actually, that started with back in when he was working at the studio. There's a cinematographer, Georgi Rehrberg, who worked with Tarkovsky on Mirror, which is the greatest film of all time. And after working with Rehrberg on this film, he wasn't satisfied with anyone else's work, so I'll just do it myself. And he talks about how if you're operating your own camera and you're connected to the image in front of you, and you're feeling that image and you're moving with it, then the film is building within you, and you have an intuitive sense of where things need to go. Because this film, and I think I'll talk about this next, but really could only be shot chronologically, obviously, because it's life, and these pigs are growing up. But it was shot chronologically and then edited chronologically. So he would get a shot, and he could feel that it was going to be right for the film. And then he just had a sense for what needed to come next. So he would say, okay, that's that shot, that's the first shot of the film. Okay, second shot needs to be this. So he would be editing as he was filming. So here's the filming schedule. They really did not film for very long, and it was only as long as it was because they added 1 month breaks to let the piglets grow up a little bit. So he says here, and he talks about how this is the easiest film he ever made. He says, the film structure was created by real situations. I did not do anything, it just happened. So he only filmed 7 hours of footage, and the film was 90 minutes, so not that much was cut out. And he talks about how he could have shown, I mean, every minute of footage is usable. It could have just been a 7-hour-long film like Satan Tango, but people don't like to watch films that long. So this is, when he talks about the filmmaking process being very easy, this is kind of a Taoist sensibility, like the principle of minimum effort, which is the way that nature works. People like to think that an artist needs to be like struggling, like brute force, just get something done, just like force it until it works. But I think if something is right, then it just happens that way, and then you just execute. So that's the way that he works. This is very interesting. So this film has no words at all. There's no human presence on screen at all, except for the structures that humans have made. But there are no people. There's no narration. It's just images. It's almost I think of it as a silent film with sound. And so he talks about how in nature documentaries people always say, "This is an octopus. Look." And he said, "Yes, I know it's an octopus. Let me just look at it." And so the same thing. People need to be spoon-fed, or the people have gotten to this point where they're uncomfortable really connecting with an image and seeing things for what they are, and getting information out of the image, and in as much detail as possible. Because, like, the films of Tarkovsky, for example, people say that they're confusing. They're not at all. It's just that people aren't looking at what's happening in front of them. It's the same thing with this film. There's nothing confusing about it. It's animals on a farm. People might say it's confusing because they're not being force-fed. They're not being told exactly what's happening, but it's being shown to you. So he talks about the secret of filmmaking is the distance between the camera and subject. And really this goes back to his beginnings as a stills photographer. And I will expand this. I will say that if we're talking about the absolute method, cinematic practice, technical practice on the most basic level is about where do you put the camera, what lens is on the camera, and where do you edit. That's all filmmaking is. There's no writing, there's no acting, there's no costume design, there's no set design, there's no lighting design. That is the essence of cinema. If we're talking about this, the absolutnia kino, the absolute method. So Joaquin Phoenix is executive producer on this film, and of course he's very passionate about animal rights and conservation and the environment. And the American co-producer Jocelyn Barnes was telling Kossakovsky that they should get him involved somehow, and Kossakovsky just thought there was just no way, it was just impossible. But then when he won the Oscar for Joker, everyone was calling him and saying, you're saying the same thing, so you need to get in touch. So eventually they showed him the film, and Joaquin said that every person on the planet must watch it, and he would make it happen, and he did. So this is what Joaquin said. I won't read the whole thing, but he said, "It is a film of profound importance and artistry." Now I know you like this. This is Paul Thomas Anderson. I know there are some PTA fans in the room here. I won't read the whole thing again, but he said, "Gunda is pure cinema." He said, "It's what we should all aspire to as filmmakers and audiences." So if you need an endorsement, if you trust PTA. This is a final quote from Kossakovsky. He says, "Many young filmmakers think that just because they're good people, they can change the world. That if they just show a problem, the world will be transformed for the better. No. The world will be better if you don't seek to change it, but if you respect it, if you firstly learn about how the world exists, its rules. First you have to learn to be humble and to not kill anyone." So it's tempting to want a documentary to give us, not even if it's not an answer, just present us with a very clear problem. This is the problem that we're looking at, and just articulating the problem, and then an audience able to see this problem in front of them makes it easy, makes it palatable. Kossakovsky does not do this, but I think audiences really don't need ultimately to be presented with a final deduction. I think, and like I've said here, Truly meaningful change begins with real understanding, and that requires first seeing things clearly as they are. People are always rushing to identify a problem in a way that makes sense to them, and then it's like a game, like, let's make a problem and then let's make a solution to this problem. But before any of that happens, you have to see things the way they are, not just in terms of problems to solve, but life the way it is. Because the real problem, obviously this is extremely important, these issues are important to Kossakovsky. The most important thing in the world, which is why he made this film, but this is not an ideological film, it's not a political film. He wants people to connect to reality and to deepen and strengthen and clarify their relationship with the world around them. And then finally, I have a trailer. Do we have time for, it's 2 minutes. Do we have time? It's 3:05.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay.